Hey there, YouTube family friends. Rev with Rev It Up Mustang Fanatic Mechanic Edition. Mechanic Edition. Today we're working with an '08 Ford Escape Limited V6 two-wheel drive, so it's front-wheel drive, 3.0, 6-cylinder. Suspected, well, we have a coolant leak, and I did a pressure check, and the water pump is bad. The AC condenser is also leaking, and it's suspected that we may have a heater core leak, but we couldn't tell for the simple reason too much water was coming from the water pump, and the heater core is at its highest point, so the water never gets to circulate up there, even though we pressurize the system, because all the air in it never makes it up there, and it leaks out of the bottom of the water pump. So I don't suspect that we have a heater core leak. I know I seen it in the front of the AC bezel, the AC condenser, and definitely the water pump. So we're going to be tackling those two, and once we get that together, then we can pressurize the system again, and if there's any leaks, we can detect if it's coming from the heater core. But they complained of no heat, and the coolant level was very low because of the leak. So we're going to take the front bumper cover off. Just one screw up here, then little fasteners that hold the bumping, 2 screws on that end, 2 screws on that end, couple of bumpers there. Then we got to take loose this bolt right here. We got to take off that bolt right there, and then I believe the bumper will just pull right out. Yeah, and so we'll get back to you when we get the front bumper cover off. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, one front bumper cover off of a Ford Escape. You can see 2 bolts that went there, 1 body panel clip right there, 2 other bolts right over there, and then on the ends of it, it's just 2 more of these body clips, and then 1 screw that you take loose on the fender, and then it just pops right out of place. And here is the air AC condenser, and the AC condenser is leaking right around this area, right down in here. It is leaking. It was fizzling when I was doing the pressure test. So we have to evacuate the AC system, and these are the AC charge lines in high and low pressure right there. You loosen up these 2 bolts, and then the AC hoses are gonna come out of there. You're gonna have rubber sealants inside there to help keep your refrigerant in, but you're gonna have this bolt, and you're gonna have that bolt that holds this AC condenser in, and here's the coolant lines and transmission lines. Those are going to have to be taken loose, and this just sits down on the bottom here. But you don't want to loosen these bolts up yet that holds the condenser in place, because you want to be able to get these AC lines loose here. Now, and then these will have to be, they just come out, you twist them out of the way, these little columns here, and you can take a panel tool remover and move that out of the way if you want. But our water pump is right down there where you see that hole's at. It's down there, but that pulley, the camshaft pulley, we have to take that off because there's 1 bolt that we can't get to, which is right down there. That bolt you're looking at there, it is even with the pulley, and you cannot get that bolt out, so you have to have a puller to get that out. And right up underneath that is the water pump, and that drives the belt on that water pump there. So you don't have to worry about timing anything, because the water pump is on the driver's side of the engine, which is the left side. On the right side of the engine, this is where your drivetrain is. You can see down there, you got your AC belt, the compressor, you got your crank pulley there, and then you have the tensioner right there. We can release the tension, alternator belt, we're going to alternator. So the engine is timed on this side behind the cover in there, so we don't have to worry about timing when we change this water pump. It's just a trick to getting the belt on and getting the belt off. And this belt looks fairly new, and I wouldn't bother changing it because the leak is below the water pump, and so it's weeping out of that hole, so the belt is not getting antifreeze on it. So we're going to begin by removing this air intake right here. We're going to take and loosen these two bolts up. We're going to take the sensor off here. We're going to take the sensor off there. And we're going to have to disconnect the positive battery cable, get that out of the way. And might as well go ahead and disconnect that negative battery out of the way also. And then we should have enough room once we get this breather out to take the hoses off. We got to drain the coolant and all that stuff. So we'll get back to you when we get this stuff off. Okay, to prevent a lot of splashing of water coming out, I put a little hose onto that radiator drain spout right down there. You'll see that little hose down there, just to the bottom of that little silver or copper color fitting. And I got it coming out to a little drain pan right here. This is all water in here, so I'm not worried about it. We're going to use clean antifreeze when we do this whole system over, and it can't be that much water in this thing because it leaked a lot. So that's what we do. And then the overflow we're catching in that little pan right there, which has already stopped. And so once those lines get all the coolant out, then we're going to start to take loose this top radiator hose right here, and then this bottom radiator hose right here. And we got to take that top hose off right there. And then there's a hose right here we're going to be taking loose as well. And we're going to be replacing the thermostat, which I'm pretty sure the thermostat would be right in here on that bottom hose. That's what far as what I can see. I don't see anywhere else where a thermostat would be. So I'm going to say that's where the thermostat is. So enough water has drained, so I will start loosening some of these hoses to get out of my way. Now as we speak, you can see some of the water that is draining from the thermostat. See if I can shine the light down in there. Hard for you to see it, but there's a puddle that's dripping from right underneath that little gear right there, where you see that little rust sticking out. Well, up underneath there, right down in there, there's antifreeze leaking from right up under the water pump. That is the water pump right there, and this is the pulley that we have to take loose right here. But now I'm gonna take loose this bottom radiator hose, and then I have to take loose that hose right there, take loose that hose right there, because that all connects to the water pump. Very important tool. This is a seal peeler, but you can stick it in the end of here, and you can kind of crack the bead on this hose, and this is not sharp enough that it's going to put a hole inside of this hose. You want to get it in there and get up underneath it like so, and just go around like that, and it breaks the seal on that hose, and then that hose will come off, and you can see that the seal is being broken. So that's broken, so now I can take that out. Okay, so I rigged up a harmonic or balancer puller, and if you look right down in there, you can see where the dirt is beginning to break, and I heard it pop, so it's coming loose. And I got a wrench, adjustable wrench, I mean a ratchet wrench, and you can see the pulley starting to back out. And it's pulling out. So when I get it close to pulling out, I'll come back. You can see it's close to pulling out. You can see a lot of shiny in there as I ratchet it. And she's right at the tip. Yep. And you see it just come off. Now, the belt, that's the way you take it off, and you put it on with the belt. I'll show you two different ways that you can do this. But now that I got this out, let me get it from around the belt and show you what I did here. Okay. So, this is pretty strong, this pulley. So I got a steel washer here and here. And I pulled it out, and you can see that I got this end that went inside the camshaft, and that didn't damage the camshaft. And as I ratchet it down, it pulls it off. Now I'm going to get the correct tool to install this. It's the same thing as a power steering pump puller and installer, and you can rent that at AutoZone for $26, and it costs $26. So I don't know if I'll get one or if I'll buy it or loan it. I'll see. But we got it off, and let's look at the water pump down here. Here's the belt. The belt is in great shape. No need to even change that belt. The belt almost looks new. But that right there, that is your water pump right here. And usually these things seize up, but that's where it's leaking from. It's coming out of the weep hole down the bottom. It's just dripping. I can see it dripping down there. Now there's 3 bolts that takes this water pump off. That's 2 that goes right into here, and then there's 1 down on the bottom that comes out, and then the whole water pump should come out. So when I get to that point, I'll let you know. Nope. Okay, the water pump is almost out. Let me show you why we had to remove the pulley, because you got a bolt here that went into the head, and you got another bolt right here that went into the head. So there was 2 bolts that you had to remove. That no, I'm sorry, that's not it. Over here, 1 here and 1 here. This is the crank pulley. So there was 2 bolts underneath there. You take loose, and then that 3rd one right there is what you would have to take loose. And here's the water pump right here on the side, because I had to get the hose off of the where the thermostat is, and then the hose that goes into the intake down there, and then there's a bottom hose on this water pump right here. I need clamps, my wire clamps, and I'll pull that down, and then I can pull this whole water pump out. Okay, the water pump's fully out. This is the hose that I was fighting with to get off, that was on the bottom of it. Okay, now you can get a better view of what I'm talking about here. That's the pulley, and that hole right there and that hole right there goes into the head, and the pulley was in the way right here, so you had to take that pulley off. And then the other bolt is right here, that one right there that I'm pointing at, that hole right there, all the way down here, right here. If I get my hand out of the way, right here, that's the other bolt, and then the whole water pump comes out. Now this is the thermostat housing right here, bolt here, and a bolt underneath here. So I'll pull that loose and the thermostat will come out. So right now I have to go to AutoZone and get the water pump, which is right here. Usually they seize up, but this isn't seized, but water was leaking out and coming down, so this whole unit is no good. So we'll go to AutoZone, and we got that whole unit on order, and we're going to get the power steering puller installer to get that gear back on with that belt. And we'll put the new water pump on. We'll get the new thermostat in. We'll get those hoses all clamped up. And then we're gonna have to take this AC bezel out. And first we gotta get the Freon out of there. And then, well, we evacuate the Freon out of there. And the coolant lines are already, the coolant's already out. We'll get the AC lines off. We'll get the coolant hose transmission line off, and then we'll take these AC lines off. Then we'll take we'll have to take, I believe it is that bolt loose right there, and then over here on this side take that bolt loose, and then we can lift this AC bezel right up. But I'll have to take this is a 8mm, I think, or either 10, 8mm, maybe 10, and take that off so I can slide this condenser out. I got caught up with what I was doing and didn't have a chance to record, but anyway, you want to get this hose on here first. I already changed the thermostat. Those 3 screws, this thermostat will be facing outward. This is the thermostat right here, and you'll see that little pin right there. It's got to be at the 12th lock position, and it goes inside there, and then there's an O-ring that goes around the top, and then that cover goes on, and it's just 3 8mm bolts. So that's what a thermostat is in. But this is kind of flexible, so this hose, you want to make sure this clip, when you go to put this back on, this clip is facing you, so you can get this thing on, because this hose was pretty tough getting on. And then once you get that one on, this one right here, you just slide that one down, and make sure again these pinch clamps are in a position where you can get them. And let's see what else. So yeah, you want to get those on first and get your thermostat in, and then after that you want to get your pulley, your camshaft puller in. Now the way I did this, I put the belt on the water pump down there, and I had the belt on the cam gear. And let me show you my cam installer. This is actually a water pump, a power steering pulley installer. But this right here, you get the right size, and that one's the right size, and it will right down inside the cam, there's threads, and you thread that all the way in, and you have your belt on, and you get that, put some oil, not on the cam side, but on this side, put oil on the inside of here, so to help slide it on, and you screw this all the way until it stops. And when it stops, then this right here, as you screw this in, it will draw the pulley in. And all you have to do is keep watching down here. And when I took it off, I showed you a little dirt spot, and I put it right back at that dirt spot, and you can see that it's lined up nice and easy. And then you would get a wrench and back that off, and then you can pull this out right here. And that's how you do it with putting the belt on, because there's no tensioner pulley to take that off. Some people use twist ties and bump the engine over, but that's not necessary when you have the install kit. Just put the belt right on and put that right over top, and then screw it right on in there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take, here's the bottom radiator hose right here, we'll put that on right here. The top radiator hose is right here, and we'll put the top radiator hose on, and we'll be all done with that. And then we can put the breather back on, and then we're going to start on this AC condenser. I forgot to mention something that was very important. I'm gonna have to show you on the old water pump. So the old water pump, it will go in like this. All right, see that bottom tube right there? Well, put that bottom hose on first with that clamp, and then slide that down, because that way you don't have to go underneath the car and remove that belly pan from under there, and you can take it off the same way, get the top hoses off and everything, and then you can pull this up and you can take the clamp off that. So that's the way you do that bottom bolt, because you can't, that bottom one, because you can't see it, but this is the hose right here, and it goes way down underneath, so that hose is on there. And in my opinion, don't waste your time taking the battery out and taking the battery tray out to give yourself more room. You don't need to do that. I have plenty of room to get the puller on, pull that cam shaft sprocket off, plenty of room to take the top hose off, this bottom hose off, that hose off, loosen that clamp, and loosen up, once I got the cam gear off, loosen up the water pump and pull it out. No problems putting the water pump back in. So don't bother. That's just a bunch of nonsense. But you can disconnect the negative battery. I took this positive battery thing off because it was in my way. So I took that off. But I got everything just about plugged up here. Okay, I got my AC gauge hooked up. Here's the charge line, which is the green one here, or the blue one. And you can't mess these up because these valves are two different sizes. The hot side, or the red side, the high pressure side, is the bigger one, and the low pressure side is the smaller one. And this is where you would allow the Freon to go into. But here's the hole that you allow the Freon to go into. But now we're just going to do a static check, static temperature. So these gauges, you can remain closed, but we're going to open up both these gauges. You never open this gauge up for any reason, and we're going to see what the static charge, to see if it has Freon in here. So on here it has, you know, open or closed. So we want to open that line up. And then we want to open the high pressure side up. And it's open, and my gauges, they're not moving. I mean, you know, when you, this line is, let me just open up this side, but you don't open up that side, and let's see what we got here. I don't think they even got any Freon in this system, because the way it's set right now, these lines are open, and this reading should be going up, and they're not doing anything. I got the valves open, and it should be going up, putting pressure up there. You know, because you only open this valve when you're going to allow Freon to escape, or when you're going to put Freon in. And that's how you, this is your discharge line and your fill line right here. And this is the only side you open. You never open this high side. And you know, there's nothing in here. I guarantee you. There's nothing in this system whatsoever. I'll even open the high side. Nothing. So this system is not, it doesn't have any antifreeze in here. I mean Freon in here at all. Let me check my gauge ports. I'm gonna take a screwdriver, stick it in this straighter valve, and push the straighter valve in and see if any Freon come out. I need a smaller screwdriver though. Just so you know, I do have my safety goggles on. But I'm just gonna tap in on the straighter valve and see if anything comes out. Nothing. I got that valve pushed all the way in. This system is empty. This system is empty. So that goes to show you that where this leak was here, all the Freon ran out of this system. So that's exactly why, if this thing had Freon in it, when you push that Schrader valve in, it's just like a fuel Schrader valve. If there's any fuel in that rail, it'll come spitting out. I pushed that thing all the way in. There's nothing. So that leak is right inside here where it's cracked at. Somewhere along, I can't remember when, right along here or right along here, one of these places, this thing had a crack in it, and I believe is right up there. So I don't have to worry about evacuating the system because there's nothing in it. And it's been ran dry for so long that there's moisture in the system, and I don't have one of those dry vacs to get the moisture out of the system before you add Freon to it. So I can take this condenser off and put the new one on, and they'll just have to go to an AC shop and get the rest of that done. Okay, so this system is completely empty. I done pushed in that Schrader valve and nothing comes out. So it's been running around probably a couple of months like that. So I don't have a vacuum pump, because normally what you would do, you will hook everything up to the vacuum pump, and the vacuum pump would suck the moisture that's out of the system, and it takes, usually depending on the size of the vehicle, I would say this one probably 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes it take up to an hour to get the moisture out of the system. And then once the moisture is out, then you this requires 1.56 pounds of Freon, almost 2 pounds. And then you would watch your gauges up here. The high pressure side would always read somewhere about 180 to 200, somewhere in that range. The low pressure side would always go up to about 70, and it'll stay there, and that'll be your static pressure. Your static pressure, that's with the engine off. Then you start the engine up, and you fill it up with Freon, and of course Freon to get in there. And like I said, the high side will be always around 180, 190, 200 to stay there. The low side will be around 70, 80, and it'll come back down as the compressor kicks in. That low pressure side will keep changing, but the low pressure side is going to stay somewhere around 70 to 90 or so. So that's the way you do the readings on those, and we go by the outside numbers here. So I'm just going to change the condenser and put the new one on, and make sure the seals go in over on here, and then I'll have them go to a shop. It'll be about $100. They'll hook the vacuum pump up and vacuum the moisture out of it for about an hour, and then they'll recharge the system and let it sit and make sure the pressures doesn't drop. And you gotta let it sit for about 30 minutes, and if nothing drops, then you make sure you got the correct amount of Freon, everything's blowing cold. It'll be about $100 for them to do that. But I am going to get me a vacuum pump this year, so I can start doing that, because I have ways of evacuating the system without having the evacuation system. There's ways you can do it. You can trap it in a bottle and then send the bottle to one of those, I forgot what them yards are where they collect trash and stuff at. You can take it out to one of those yards there, and they'll get rid of where you take antifreeze at and all that stuff. They'll take that. You don't really need a machine to do that. You can take a bottle like that, open it up, take the yellow tube, put it in there, and wrap it with duct tape and let it drain inside there. Or you can put a fitting inside, yeah, just cut out, put a fitting in, and then let it sit down there and let it drain. And then there's ways of vacuum system, but I'm planning on getting all that stuff. So here we took the 2 screws out from here, and then you just slide those out. You see the O-rings right there on the low and the high pressure side, so we got that loose. Okay, so now we come over on the driver's side. We're gonna have to take these loose right here, and this runs to the coolant and transmission lines. We want to take those off. Then once we get those off, then we take that bolt loose, we take that bolt loose, and we take that bolt loose, and then we can just lift the condenser right up out of the place. Okay, we got the condenser out, and as you can see, it was just those 2 hoses right there. That bolt that went to the radiator, the other top bolt that went to the radiator, and you can see right here the 2 AC lines. Now if you look down there, you'll see those hooks. It slides right behind the hook. That's where the condenser slides, on both sides behind the hooks. And where the problem was on the condenser, you can see where it's wet right along down here. Well, right on this seam, right along the seam in here is where it was leaking out at, and it was, you can see it was this color here, and it was leaking out here. I mean, it was just bubbling out, leaking out right there. So we matched the old condenser up with the new one, okay? And you can see this has this bracket coming over here to hold this on, but on the new one it doesn't have the bracket here. It has the radiator shroud brazed in right there, and this is where the radiator screws into right there. And I got to take these off, and here's 2 studs, and there's the studs over there. We got to screw these studs into here, and a lot of times on the end of them, which is not, these are usually would have an area where you can put a square socket on it and tighten it up, but this doesn't have it. But anyway, to get these studs in, all we have to do is just use the 2 screw method. Find 2 screws that match this, screw it down, screw the first one in, screw the second one in, and then we take the first screw and we tighten that all the way down, and then we back off with the first screw and then back the second screw off. That's how you get these studs in. Quick update, the new studs were too short. See how long these stick out here? Well, when I put the other bolts in, the stud, you can see where in the middle here where it's smooth, when you screw it all the way in, it barely sticks out, and you can't tighten that down. So I had the 2 bolt nut. You tighten the first bolt down tight, then the one on the outside you tighten that tight, then you put a wrench on the inside one, and that turns that, which it allows you to get this stud back out. And then I had a little 6.5 6.5 inch socket, and screwed these out of the old radiator. You can see the heads on it. It's got like a little 6 point, and I screwed these studs in there, got them tight, and then put the AC lines on, made sure the O-rings were oiled and lubed up from a residue of antifreeze or residue of coolant, freon from the old condenser, and tighten these down real tight. And also the thickness on that rubber bushing, which goes into the radiator here, was too thick, so I had to take that off. This was too thick, and the screw wouldn't go in, so I got the insert from the old radiator off, the old condenser off, slid it in there, and that tightened that up. I got those hoses on that side tight, the transmission lines and the coolant lines all in. This is all tucked in now, So what I'm going to do now is everything is buttoned up and tight. So I'm going to have the bumper, I'm going to keep the bumper off, and I'm going to you could take this fill tube off and hold it upside down, and or hold it upright and put what do you call those things, a funnel in there, and let antifreeze get inside the radiator and fill it up that way, and then hook this back up, and then you have enough antifreeze in the car to run the car. And when the car running, what you want to do is, this is the fill line right here where this crease is. You want to put it about an inch above the fill line, and start the car up. And the way you get the bubbles out or the air out of the system is you run the car about 2,500 RPMs, 3,000 RPMs for about 3 to 5 minutes. Back it back down, let it idle for a little bit, then you rev it up again for about another 5 minutes. Then you turn the car off, and it won't be hot enough, and you come back out to the coolant reservoir, and it should be back down low. You fill it up again 1 inch above, and then you can put the cap back on, and then you start it up again and let it idle at 3,500 RPMs, rev it up 3,500 RPMs for about, another 2 to 3 minutes. And by that time it should be bubbled out, and you want to turn the heat on. Make sure your heat is working, and at the same token, we can check for leaks easier with the bumper off, just in case something's leaking. We will have the bumper off, and we won't have to take that back off. But I'm pretty confident that we shouldn't have any leaks. So let me just put these caps back on the Schrader valves on the AC, because I'm not doing the AC. But I had this vehicle before, and I just filled this up, and the coolant will just go down into the radiator. It goes in there pretty good. You just let it go till it fills up, and just don't let it get to the overflow, because then it'll start spilling out. You could do it either way, and once you get at least one jug in there, then you can go ahead and crank it up. So we got it filled with coolant. We've got it running. There appears to be no leak, but we're doing a pressure check. I got it at 16 psi. It's supposed to be at 17, but I got it at 16 because I could see 16, and we're going to see if it leaks down any, and we're going to just leave it there for about 3 minutes or so, and we're going to look over the engine and check for leaks. Rev with Rev It Up Mustang Fanatic Reductions Mechanic Edition. We're back with the 08 Ford Escape. We replaced the water pump, and we replaced the AC condenser, and we did our pressure check, and we still got a leak. And what I found is the leak is coming from, you can't see it, but right down in there, up underneath the thermostat, there's a little valley. That's a lot of piping underneath there, and the leak is coming from down there. So I got to take this throttle intake off again and move some stuff out of the way and see if we can find out exactly where that leak is coming from. But it's been ready since Friday. Today is Tuesday. I had problems with the hip and the back, so I had to take 4 days off and stay in bed and medicate myself. So but anyway, since I know the leak is coming from, I can put that little belly pan under there back up. I can go ahead and put this bumper back on, and then just concentrate on that little area down there. So Rev It Up Mustang Fanatic Mechanic Edition. Wrapped up another Mechanic Edition here. The 08 Ford Edge 3.0 liter 6-cylinder engine. You can see the coolant reservoir is right there. We bleeded all the air out. You can see down here that shiny pump. That is the new water pump. down the very bottom where that chrome is sticking out, and the installer tool put the belt on nice. There's no squealing, and we do have heat, so the heat is blowing out nice. And that little leak down on bottom there, it sealed itself off. I kind of went over a little bit of hoses down there and tweaked it, and it stopped the leak. We ran it for quite a bit, and the heat is blowing out nice and hot, so we're good in that respect. So the next phase the individual will have to do is go to a local shop where they can draw a vacuum pump, because here's the high pressure, low pressure hose, and the low pressure hose right here is where we would fill the Freon with, and we would empty it with the yellow line. We will open up the green side and we will suck it up, and then you put a vacuum on it and let it sit 45 minutes, and it gets the moisture out. Then they could put the AC back on. So the AC condenser is on. There's no leaks from it, so it is good to go.